way down. If there's no change in the morning, we'll take her to the doctor's." Maura nodded. She was too exhausted to argue, and Tommy was right. It was free now. They didn't have to worry about the money anymore. "Aye, we will," she whispered as the door closed, and she heard the heavy tread of her husband and daughter making their way back up the uncarpeted but well-scrubbed wooden stairs. She sighed, and with her lungs full of steam and vapour, shuffled Angela higher up into her arms, lay back against the settle, and closed her eyes. Tommy had brought down some old grey army blankets and pillows from the bed upstairs and tucked them around the two of them, but Maura didn't sleep. She listened to every fresh and ferocious battering of sleet on the window, and every breath her daughter took, in and out, until the night had slipped away and the first light crept in through the windows. Aileen feared that she would be late for work. She hated to be late for anything, but today of all days would be disastrous. She'd been asked to call in to Matron's office mid-morning, and she had no idea why. She was dreading it, and, as usual, her mother was doing her best to make things worse. Aileen had lost count of the number of times her mother had forced her to take time off, claiming that she was so ill she required Aileen's personal nursing care at home. Aileen had almost become ill herself with the worry of it all. Even though they now had Gina to help out, it still happened too often, and today looked like it might be one of those days. The wheedling and the complaining all too familiar. As Aileen moved over to the bed and laid out her mother's clothes, a sinking feeling settled into the pit of her stomach. She remembered the many occasions she'd tried to cajole her mother in the past, and how torturous those mornings had been, and how weak and futile her own excuses had sounded. "But I can't take time off. I'm a staff nurse now, and besides, Sister Taps is a stickler. You have to turn up to the ward half dead and needing admitting to St Angelus yourself before she'll accept any excuse for absence, Mother." When Mrs. Page had first been discharged from hospital following her stroke, she had exploited the guilt she knew Aileen carried for being healthy in the face of her mother's infirmity. She abused her daughter's compassionate nature, her willingness to help, and in the first few months, Aileen had allowed her to do so. That had been her big mistake. If it hadn't been for Sister Taps, Aileen was very sure she would not have remained in nursing. One day, not quite 12 months ago, after yet another morning when Aileen had had to make her excuses, Sister Taps had taken Aileen into the sitting room on her ward and closed the door behind her with barely a sound. "Take a seat, Staff Nurse Page," she'd said in her softest voice. Her gentle manner had done nothing to ease Aileen's anxiety. "This is what you do with parents when a child has died," she'd wanted to say to her. "You bring them in here, close the door, ask Branner to fetch tea, and sit them in front of the fire with a clean handkerchief ready on your sideboard." She was convinced Sister Taps was about to send her to Matron to dismiss her. But there was no handkerchief on the polished sideboard, no glass of water to restore the equilibrium when the tears were spent. She looked through the glass panes above the handle of the wood-panelled door. It had been painted buttercream to please the children and keep the atmosphere light and airy, quite different from the dark coffee colour of all the other St Angelus wards. Branner was changing the flower water and cleaning the vases that had been laid out on the highly polished central ward table. It didn't look as though she'd been asked to make tea. The nurses were pulling out the lockers from the sides of the beds into the centre of the ward to clean them. She decided to be the first to speak. "I'm sorry, Sister Taps. It was Mother. She was ill and she was difficult about me leaving the house. I would never want to be late, ever. I love my job, you know that. She's just so difficult and—" When Aileen had sat down, she'd had no idea that she would need one of the handkerchiefs that Sister Taps kept ready for bad news days. "Oh, goodness me, child." Sister Taps jumped up and crossed the room. Tapsy, as she was known to all the nurses, was looking thinner, Aileen thought, though that was hardly surprising. She had to be